Hey everyone, me again. So I was hoping to do some videos that actually involved range footage last weekend, but I got pretty sick. I don't think it's COVID because I tried listening to Ed Sheeran and I still didn't like it. So clearly no loss of taste on my part. So I figured I'd record something at least a little bit informational, even if it's maybe 15 years too late. But maybe not, because I still do see these things show up at auction, at gun shows, at gun stores. I still see the question asked on forums and comment sections, what is a Mitchell's Mauser? How do I identify one? Do I want one? Stuff like that. And it really kind of makes sense because the people in the milsurp hobby, they've probably doubled or tripled in the last few years. And so I figured I'd kind of give an amateurish 2 cents, explanation. If I get something wrong, feel free to correct me. I'm not an expert on anything that I discuss. So I probably won't take issue if you do that unless you say something particularly stupid. But anyways, let's get rolling. So Mitchell's was an importer. They imported a variety of models, such as some that were like in new production at the time, such as this Serbian M63. They also did some Yugo M48s, and a few other things too. But they're kind of their bread and butter, and what really earned them their notoriety, I guess, or their questionable reputation, is their German K98Ks. So what they were doing essentially was buying up Russian capture K98Ks, and that's an example of one of those like this one. This is not a Mitchell's gun. This is just a typical example of what a Russian capture K98 might look like. But in any case, they were buying these up, and they were very affordable. They were very common at the time, and they really weren't thought of as particularly desirable collector's items. I mean, that's sort of changing a little bit these days. But in any case, they were buying them up and they were kind of stripping them down and refinishing them to try to make it look like they were some kind of a, pristine factory, fresh, highly desirable collector's item. They would send them with little like letters of provenance or certificates of authenticity or whatever, marketing them as if they were something more collectible. They were also very widely reported to put fake markings on them to make them more desirable. So that's really the gist of all that the gun actually is. So the other question that does, frequently come about is, how do I identify one? How do I know that's what I have on my hands? Fortunately, there's a couple of very easy ways that don't require you to know much of anything about Mausers whatsoever, and a couple that do. But in any case, one of the dead giveaways, of course, is that since many people bought into the whole collector's item shtick, when these were being sold new, they will still have retained the Mitchell's box and the little certificate that came with it. People kind of held on to those in hopes that it would help with resale value. And so when I see them in the wild, they generally do still have those things with them. But if they don't, they are still imports, and so they will need to be import marked. So we can see here, it says Mitchell's Manufacturing Corporation. Sometimes this will be shortened to MMC. The location seems to vary depending on the model. This one, of course, as you can see, is on the receiver. Oftentimes you'll see it on the left side of the barrel, not in this case, of course, but I think with K98s and M48s, you do often see them there, on the barrel, that is to say. So those are two kind of very easy dead giveaways. Another one that kind of does require you to know a thing or two is that because these are Russian capture guns, they will often have the hallmarks of Russian capture, but they'll be refinished to look more like this. And kind of one of the dead giveaways that this is incorrect is that they'll have these high polished bolts that are in the white, kind of like you see on this guy. This is actually not correct for either a Russian capture gun or for a factory original. So on the Russian capture guns, you can kind of see the bolt is dark. And there's also oftentimes these like electro pencil force matching of the serial numbers. So that's another kind of very frequent sign. It's not a guarantee because theoretically somebody else could have refinished the gun to look that way, but it is a pretty classic indicator that what you're dealing with is a Mitchell's gun. This gun down here, by the way, is incidentally not a Mitchell's gun. It just by coincidence happens to be refinished to look like one, or at least the bolt is in the, in that same high polish state. So I just used it as a bit of a demonstrator. It's actually somewhat misleading to call it a Mitchell's gun. It actually isn't, but in any case, those are some of the things that I would look out for if I wanted to identify one. And finally, perhaps one of the more subjective questions, should you get one if you run into one? Well, obviously it's your money, so you do with it as you see fit. Personally, if I saw one and it was priced like a shooter grade rifle, then yeah, I don't see why not. By reputation, they're pretty good shooters. by all reports that I've read, allegedly Mitchell's did select them for bore condition. I don't know if that's true, but if I was after a shooter grade rifle and I saw one that was priced as such, I think that, yeah, I don't see why not. It's not like you're supporting Mitchell's these days because they're out of business and all. So yeah, I don't see why not. Now, if it was priced as some sort of a collector's item, something, well into the thousands, then I don't think I would. Any serious Mauser collector, which I'm not one. If I were, I guess I probably wouldn't own stuff like this. But if I were one, or any serious Mauser collector, would know exactly what they are. They'll smell them from a mile away, and they really aren't that interested in them. So I think that they kind of occupy this peculiar neither fish nor fowl territory, in that they're generally too expensive to be shooter grade rifles, but at the same time not desirable enough to be collector's items. So if it was at collector's prices, I really wouldn't, because ultimately all they really are Russian captured guns that were redone. So if you want one, just pick a particularly nice example of one of those, instead of paying over way more than it's worth for the same exact gun but refinished. So if anything, it's actually been a little bit stripped of its historic provenance. That's kind of my thinking on that. Obviously, like I said, it's a little subjective in this regard, but that's really about all I have to say. Thank you for watching, as always.